Hey friend, I feel like I need to share something with you, something that's been sitting on my heart. If you're reading this, I truly believe it's not by accident. It feels like the universe has a way of delivering messages right when we need them most, doesn't it? I'm wondering if you've ever felt it, that deep, quiet sense of being completely on your own, even in a crowded room. A kind of silent confusion that creeps in when the world goes to sleep, and you're left alone with the hum of the refrigerator and the thoughts in your head. I've been there. I remember looking at my own life, at the path I was on, and wondering, how did it get so quiet, so narrow? It felt like all the doors were closing, the phone stopped ringing, and the world I knew was just fading. If any of that sounds familiar, if you feel that little spark of recognition deep down in your gut, then please, just hear me out. You are in a sacred space. This isn't a punishment. You haven't been forgotten. You are being prepared. This is what I've come to call the divine forging. And let me tell you, it's a path that most people will never understand, and that's okay. But you need to know you're not going crazy, and you are not alone. If this resonates with you, do me a favor. Just drop a comment below that says, I am not alone. It's a way for us to see each other, to know we're in this together, walking through this fire. And if you feel called to, please like and share this. You never know who else out there is sitting in the dark, praying for a sign that they're on the right path. I used to think that when the divine, or the universe, or whatever you want to call it, decided to make someone powerful, it would be this big, spectacular event. You know, like in the movies. I imagined trumpets, a crowd cheering, maybe a lightning bolt from the sky, a grand coronation where everyone suddenly sees your worth. I thought it meant being handed a golden key, a sword of light, something that proved to everyone you were chosen. I imagined being surrounded by people who finally got me, who sang my praises and validated every move I made. But I've learned the hard way that that's not how it works, not at all. That's the stuff of fairy tales, the language of the ego. The ego loves a good party, a shiny trophy, a round of applause. It feeds on that external validation. But the soul is nourished by something else entirely. The divine process, the real making of a powerful man, is quiet. It's subtle, and to be brutally honest with you, it's often incredibly painful. It's this masterpiece of spiritual craftsmanship that doesn't start in the spotlight, but in the deepest, most uncomfortable shadows of your life. It doesn't begin by adding more to you, more friends, more money, more fame. It begins with taking things away, a holy, relentless, and sometimes heartbreaking subtraction. The universe has to clear the ground before it can build a temple. It has to remove all the weak, shaky foundations you've built your life on. Because true, lasting power isn't something you grab or achieve. It's something you uncover. It's what's left of you after everything you thought you were. Every label, every attachment, every belief has been stripped away, burned away, and washed clean. What's left is the raw, pure, unbreakable core of your soul. And that's when the real work begins, polishing that raw material under immense pressure until it shines with a light that is all its own. My own journey into this, well, it began with a profound period of isolation. I call it a sacred quarantine for the soul. It felt like the universe was gently, and then not so gently, pulling me away from everything and everyone I knew. At first, I resisted it. I thought it was cruel. Why was I being left alone? What had I done wrong? But now, looking back, I see it was an act of the highest grace. I was being isolated, but I was never, ever abandoned. My world became silent, but I was not being ignored. It was like I was being led into this perfectly still room, a room so quiet that for the first time in my life, I could finally hear it, that faint, gentle whisper of my own intuition, my higher self. It was a frequency that had always been there, but it had been completely drowned out by the constant noise of daily life, the opinions of others, the chatter of my own mind. This isolation became my crucible. It was a sacred, empty space where I was being forged in the fires of my own solitude. And it's in that patient, sometimes agonizingly long quiet, that the real divine work started. I won't lie to you. There were times I felt utterly forgotten. I'd look out the window and feel like the whole world was moving on without me, like God had just turned his back and walked away. But the truth was the exact opposite. I was being held more closely, more lovingly than ever before. It was like being cradled in the very heart of creation itself, undergoing a transformation so deep and fundamental that it couldn't be rushed. It demanded silence. It demanded patience. It demanded that I sit in what felt like total desolation. But have you ever seen a field after a controlled burn? It looks like devastation, but it's actually the necessary step before new, vibrant life can spring forth. That emptiness I felt, it wasn't a void. It was the sacred space being cleared so that something eternal, something real, could finally be poured into me. This whole process was about subtraction, a careful, deliberate, and often painful removal of everything that wasn't essential. I've come to believe that when the universe has a truly significant purpose for you, it doesn't just pile more stuff on top of your already cluttered life. It starts by taking things away. It dismantles the false self you've so carefully constructed. All those little comforts I clung to, the ones that kept me playing small, they vanished. The applause from others that I secretly craved, the validation that propped up my fragile ego, gone. It was like every crutch I had ever leaned on was kicked out from under me, one by one. And it's not because those things are evil. There's nothing wrong with comfort, and who doesn't like a little praise now and then? But for the person being forged for true power, those things become distractions. They are beautiful, comfortable, gilded cages that keep your soul from learning how to fly on its own. They're like heavy anchors that keep your personal vibration tethered to the shallow end of the pool, preventing you from diving into the deep, powerful currents of the universe. Every person who walked away, every opportunity that fell through, every door that slammed in my face, I now see each one as a divine act of pruning. The universe was lovingly trimming away the dead branches of my life to make room for new growth, for something stronger and more authentic to emerge. I swear to you, it felt like loss. It felt like failure. It felt like punishment. But it was none of those things. It was liberation. It was purification. The universe was just taking away everything I thought I needed, so I could finally discover who I was without them. And here's a hard truth I had to learn. Real power, the kind that endures, can't be planted in soft, easy soil. Think about it. A giant sequoia, one of the most magnificent trees on Earth, can't grow in a fluffy little flower pot. Its roots need something to grip, something firm and unyielding, so they can anchor themselves deep, deep into the earth. If the ground is too soft, the first big storm will knock it right over. So, the universe started to harden the ground of my life. The paths that used to be easy became overgrown with thorns. The routines that made me feel safe were completely disrupted. The life I had so predictably mapped out began to shift and crumble like a sandcastle against the tide. It was like my spiritual roots were being tested, forced to dig deeper and deeper, searching for something solid, something unshakable to hold on to. You see, I believe that power that comes too easily, without that deep inner transformation, becomes a poison. It corrupts you. It inflates your ego until you're just a hollow shell. It ultimately destroys the very person it was given to. A man has to be tempered, like a blacksmith tempers steel in the fire, before he can be trusted with the immense responsibility that comes with real strength. You have to be thrown into the fire, not to be destroyed, but to be purified. And that's the beautiful, alchemical secret of fire, isn't it? It doesn't just burn and consume, it refines. It burns away all the impurities, all the weaknesses, all the junk you've been carrying around, and what's left is just the pure, resilient, glowing core of who you truly are. That, my friend, is the alchemy of the soul. It's the process of turning the heavy lead of your human suffering into the shining gold of your divine strength. I want you to really hear this. This journey into the crucible, this time of fire and pressure, it's never an accident. It's not just a string of bad luck. It's a meticulously designed process, a divine plan unfolding with a precision that you can only appreciate in hindsight. That aching loneliness you might be feeling, that's not neglect from the universe. That is your sacred initiation. It's the entry point into the deeper mysteries of your own soul. the deafening silence that surrounds you. That's not absence. That is a form of profound instruction. It's a classroom where the only textbook is your own inner wisdom, and the only teacher is the quiet voice of your soul. I remember standing in that silence, feeling like the whole world had just forgotten me. And in a way, it had. Doors that I had always counted on suddenly slammed shut. People who I thought would be in my life forever started to drift away. It wasn't dramatic, it was just a quiet, energetic mismatch. They couldn't resonate with the new frequency I was starting to vibrate at. The path I was on, the one I thought was so solid, just crumbled into dust right under my feet. Everything I used to identify with my job, my relationships, my hobby all started to dissolve. But please, believe me when I say this is not a mistake. This is the slow, deliberate, and necessary unraveling of your old self. It's the sacred death of the ego. It's like shedding a skin that you've outgrown, one that's become too tight and is holding you back. You know, a caterpillar has to literally dissolve into a kind of goo inside the chrysalis before it can become a butterfly. It has to completely fall apart. And that's what this is. It's only when the ego, with all its constant needs, its bottomless fears, and its desperate attachments, finally dies that your true, eternal soul can rise up in all its glory. It feels like a breakdown, I know. I've been there, but I promise you, it's a breakthrough. It's the sound of prison walls crumbling, walls you didn't even know you were living inside. The world might look at you and see someone who is losing everything, but the universe looks at you and sees a soul who is finally gaining himself. You're being stripped of every mask you've ever worn, every persona you've ever put on to try and fit in or be accepted. The charm you used to get by, the money that gave you a false sense of security, the reputation you worked so hard to build, all of it becomes utterly meaningless in this sacred wilderness. You become invisible to the world, and that's not because you've lost your value. It's because you're being divinely hidden, protected from the eyes of people who couldn't possibly understand the magnitude of the change that's happening inside of you. In the very heart of that wilderness, you are being remade. I mean that literally. It feels like you're being rewired, cell by cell, thought by thought. The pain you're going through, that's the divine sculptor's chisel, carefully carving away everything that isn't aligned with your highest, most authentic self. The sorrow that washes over you in waves, that's a sacred river, cleansing you of a lifetime of old conditioning and beliefs that were never yours to begin with. Every tear you cry is a purification. Every moment you feel like you can't go on, every moment of despair is an invitation to surrender. And if you can just surrender to that process, a miracle happens. For the first time, you start to hear, really hear, not the screaming noise of the world, with its endless demands and its shallow judgments. You start to hear the deep, steady, rhythmic pulse of life itself. It's like tuning into a new radio station. You begin to hear the silent music of the cosmos, that deep and wordless knowing that flows through everything. You discover this profound stillness right in the center of the chaos, an eternal peace that is the true source of all power. And there, right in the center of your own being, you meet a part of yourself you never knew existed. Something ancient, something that has been patiently waiting for you your whole life. You connect with the real you, the part that is completely untouched by time, untouched by doubt, untouched by all the wounds of your past. The divine reveals itself. And it's not some booming voice from the clouds. It's not a grand, external God. It's the still, quiet, unshakable whisper inside your own heart. The world might look at you and see someone who's broken, lost, and completely undone. But the universe sees you as you truly are, simply unfinished. You're not weak, my friend. You're in a sacred waiting period. You're gathering your strength. You're integrating this new, higher frequency. And in this waiting, a new kind of strength is being born. It's a strength that doesn't come from your muscles or your force of will. It comes from your presence. It's the kind of strength that comes from knowing, deep in your bones, that even when you feel like you're in a complete void, you are being held. It's the strength of understanding that even in the absolute eye of the storm, there is a divine purpose to it all. A truly powerful man, the kind that has been forged in this divine fire, isn't the one who can make the world bend to his will. That's the way of the tyrant, the path of the ego. I've come to see that the truly powerful man is the one who can stand perfectly still, rooted in the calm center of his own being, while the world around him spins in absolute chaos. He's the unmovable mountain in the middle of a hurricane. He knows, with every fiber of his being, that he doesn't need to dominate anyone or anything to be strong. He understands that real vulnerability isn't weakness, it's just truth without any armor. And when truth is unshackled from fear and all the games we play, it becomes the most unshakable force in the entire universe. And then, slowly, piece by piece, the parts of his life start to come back. But they're different. The people who return are the ones who can match his new, authentic frequency. The opportunities that show up are the ones that are truly aligned with his soul's purpose. Everything that comes back is purified, and what's left is only what truly matters. His circle of friends gets smaller, but the connections become infinitely deeper. They're built on a real foundation of soul-to-soul recognition, not just superficial needs. His idea of success changes. It becomes simpler, but so much richer. It's no longer measured by the size of his bank account, but by the amount of peace, joy, and meaning in his life. His confidence doesn't come from his accomplishments anymore. It flows from the unshakable foundation of who he has become. When the universe forges a man for power, it has to break him open first. It has to shatter that hard, protective shell of the ego so it can pour in something eternal. It gives him a power the world can't even recognize, not the power of control or fame, but the power of clarity, purpose, and deep, profound stillness. It's an authority that's rooted in compassion, not fear. He doesn't have to raise his voice anymore, because his very presence is enough. When he speaks, people listen, not because he's loud, but because of the weight of his silence. He doesn't chase approval, but people are drawn to his light, his authenticity, his unshakable peace. He walks lightly on this earth, but he leaves deep footprints in the hearts of the people he meets. He's been through the fire, and now he carries its warmth, not its burn. So, listen. If you're in that wilderness right now, feeling alone, confused, completely undone, please, don't despair. I want you to consider something. What if you're not lost at all? What if, for the first time, you're actually being found? What if you're being forged? That silence that feels so heavy. What if it's not emptiness, but the sacred breath of the divine, shaping you in secret, preparing you for a purpose so magnificent it could never be built on the shallow ground of your old life? You have to remember this. It's in the dark that the roots grow the deepest. It's in the silence that truth finally has a chance to settle in your bones. And it's in that moment of complete surrender, when you finally stop fighting and striving, that your real power is born. This strange, sacred journey keeps going, and you'll start to notice things. The stuff that used to get you excited, chasing recognition, needing approval, worrying about your status, it just won't have the same charge anymore. It'll all start to feel like a distant echo from a life that doesn't belong to you anymore. You'll watch the world keep up its frantic pace, chasing shadows and applauding noise, and you just won't feel that pull to join the race. Something deeper will be calling you. It won't be louder, but it will be deeper. And as you start to listen to that inner call, you'll see that true strength has nothing to do with the shape of your body or the loudness of your voice. It's in the stillness of your soul. It's in the quiet restraint of someone who knows their own power. You'll find that you can sit with your own thoughts without being swept away by them. You'll be able to feel pain without running from it. You'll learn to stand right in the middle of the fire, not begging for rain, but just letting that fire purify everything that doesn't belong. The man who's made powerful by the divine learns to trust the empty spaces. He learns that the hollow places in his life aren't mistakes. They're sacred spaces where the most profound transformation happens. It's in that quiet place, where nobody is clapping or watching, that he finally meets the parts of himself he buried a long time ago. The wounded child, the silent dreamer, the part of him that once believed in magic before the world told him he was foolish. And these parts, they don't come back to weaken him. They come back to be seen, to be acknowledged, and finally, to be healed and brought back into the whole of who he is. He stops being afraid of being misunderstood because he finally gets it. Most of the world isn't really listening anyway. They're just projecting their own stuff onto him. Most people aren't trying to know you. They're just trying to confirm what they already believe. So, he becomes okay with being silent when the world is screaming. He's okay with stepping back when everyone else is fighting for the stage. He doesn't need to convince anyone of anything anymore, because his presence is enough. His silence starts to speak louder than his old words ever did. The man being made powerful starts to walk a different path. It's less crowded, less obvious, and definitely not as celebrated by the world. He lets go of what the world calls success and starts asking the real questions. What truly matters when everything else is stripped away? What's left when the job titles are gone and the crowds have moved on? And by asking these questions, he finds a new kind of wealth. One that isn't measured in things, but in awareness, in presence, in deep, unshakable peace. He might still live in the world, but he's no longer swayed by its winds. He can see the games, the fears, the constant need people have to perform, and he gets it, because he used to be there too. But he doesn't judge. He just doesn't play anymore. The universe has taught him, through this painful but beautiful process of subtraction, that by losing everything he thought he couldn't live without, he found the one thing he truly had, himself. By being unseen, he learned how to truly see. By being silenced, he found the voice within that speaks without sound. He becomes incredibly careful with his energy. He doesn't just give it away to every fight, every argument, every distraction that comes along. He's learned that sometimes, the wisest thing you can do is nothing at all. He's learned that restraint is a kind of strength that most people will never, ever recognize. And through all this, he doesn't become hard or cold. His heart becomes more open, not less. It's open in a new way, not to be consumed by the world, but to connect with it, not to be drained by it, but to give to it from a place of overflow. He's learned that his boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're bridges with gates that he can choose to open. He's learned that discernment isn't about judgment, it's about wisdom. He's become more honest, especially with himself. He's faced the lies he used to believe, the masks he used to wear, and slowly, like leaves falling from a tree in autumn, he's let them all go. And underneath it all, he found his own true face, the one he had been hiding, even from himself. Sure, there were days he stumbled. There were days the old fears came back. But he didn't fight them anymore. He welcomed them, he sat with them, he learned from them. He stopped trying to banish his own darkness and started to understand it, to befriend it. And in doing that, he finally became whole. He discovered that true humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's just thinking of yourself less. He realized that real confidence isn't loud, it's rooted. And that real strength isn't the absence of tears, it's the courage to cry when you need to, and still get back up. He doesn't need a stage to be seen anymore, or validation to act, or noise to feel alive. He's tasted silence and found it more nourishing than any applause. He can sit with pain and not flinch. He can hold joy and not cling to it. He lives with intention, not for show. And in doing all this, he becomes something incredibly rare. A man who is fully, completely here. He stopped asking for clarity and started asking for courage. Because clarity comes and goes, but courage, my friend, courage remains. And in living with courage, he's found a different kind of clarity, the kind that comes from just walking forward, even when you can't see the path. The universe, in shaping him, wasn't worried about his convenience. The path wasn't easy, but it was in those raw, unfiltered moments of struggle that he was truly being remade. And now, he can see that nothing, not one single thing was wasted, not a single tear, not one disappointment, not one betrayal. Every broken piece served its purpose. Every time he fell, it taught him how to rise with more grace. Every closed door just redirected him to something deeper, something truer. He learned that letting go isn't losing. He learned that endings are not failures. And he learned that silence is not abandonment. He learned to trust what he couldn't see. And in that surrender, he found a strange and beautiful power, the power to change himself. The man who has been shaped by the divine knows that suffering isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning. He remembers those nights, the ache of uncertainty, the hollow echo of silence. But he also remembers how, in his deepest, darkest pit, something inside him just refused to die. Something whispered, not in a loud thunderclap, but in a profound stillness. Stay. And he stayed, not because he was strong, but because he surrendered. He stopped chasing people who couldn't see him. He stopped apologizing for his own depth. He stopped shrinking himself to fit into shallow spaces. He no longer begged to belong. He finally belonged to himself. He became a man who was no longer carried by the current, but guided by the flow. He wasn't resisting life anymore. He was dancing with it. He stopped searching for the destination and started embracing the journey. Because he understands now that true power isn't about domination, it's about liberation. It's not about having control, it's about needing none. It's not about being feared, it's about being trusted. It's not about being admired, it's about being real. And in all of this, in this quiet, powerful becoming, he hasn't become a superhero. He has simply become fully human, awake, aware, alive. He is not the man he once was. He has died 1,000 small deaths, and in those deaths, something truer, something greater, something absolutely unshakable has been born. So when the universe wants to make a man truly powerful, it doesn't give him the world. It gives him back to himself. It doesn't rush the process. It walks him through it. It doesn't crown him in comfort. It carves him through challenge. Because real power isn't about how much you can control. It's about how much you can surrender and still, somehow, remain whole.